put these microphones for you guys over here. All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to Grameen Foundation's 25th anniversary celebration. I want to welcome Grameen Foundation board members who are here in the room with us today, some staff who are here and many others who are joining us around the world online. Also, the folks at Capital Group who've been great longtime supporters of Grameen, and many other supporters and friends of Grameen over the years who are joining us online. Alex Counts founded Grameen 25 years ago on the insight that poor people don't lack the expertise or knowledge of what they need to improve. What they lack is the access to tools and technologies to enable to make those changes and to lift themselves out of poverty. I saw this myself just recently visiting our projects in India and Uganda, where one common sentiment, even though those cultures are quite different, one common thing that the people expressed was they want a hand up, not a handout, as the old saying goes. And so I think one of the things that we've really focused on over the years is how do we empower people to make the change they want to see in their lives. One of those focuses for us has been the power of private enterprise to ameliorate poverty and the creation of livelihoods that enable people to earn their livings to work themselves out of poverty. So we focused on including those people who have been often excluded from the process and from markets, and often those people have been women. Life in poor rural communities is hard, and it's even harder for women. If you can make women's lives better, that often has an impact on their families as well. And so we have focused on helping women because that lifts even more people out of poverty than as families and entire communities grow. Ending poverty and hunger is not possible without women's empowerment. Women have to be able to form businesses, to form savings groups, connect to digital bank accounts, become entrepreneurs, and be supported in taking those actions to improve their lives. So one of the areas that we focused on is the environment around women that filters into the attitudes that can help them thrive. Grameen is also focused on the power of innovation and technology to catalyze change. We have a long track record of technology innovation. Some of the early projects, like developing open source systems for microfinance institutions like MIFOS, equipping last mile agents with tools to digitize their customer service activities in the field like TerraWorks, and more recently using cryptocurrency to help women entrepreneurs finance their businesses and survive through COVID. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And none of this work would have been possible without the community of partners and other organizations supporting Grameen. Well, that's our supporters and donors over the years, our incredible network of local partners with whom we work, a wonderful core of Bankers Without Borders volunteers who give very generously of their time and expertise to help advise people around the world, and Grameen staff, both past and present. Each organization and person really focusing on doing their best to improve the lives that has the improved lives of millions of people around the world. So at 25, many of the founding principles for Grameen remain the same as they were 25 years ago. And today we're going to look back both on where we've been and where we're going, and we thank you for joining us on the journey. In a moment, we're going to see a great video from Graminis around the world. I do want to say that for those of you joining us online, we're thrilled that a generous donor has offered a match to make all donations today, up to a total of $25,000. So if you click the donate button on the bottom of your screen, or you follow the text to give instructions on the screen, any donations you make today will be matched up to $25,000. So let's kick things off with a welcome video from Graminis around the world.
the Grameen Foundation's Philippine office in Palau.
Namaste, we are Grameen Foundation India.
Namaste, we are Grameen Foundation India.
Hello from the Ghana team. We appreciate your support.
Hello from Grameen Foundation DC.
Hello from Grameen Foundation Uganda. That means hello, happy 25th anniversary.
Wow, so wonderful to see messages from so many Graminis around the world. Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Hendricks and I'm a member of the Grameen Foundation board. I am lucky enough to have had a decades-long relationship with Grameen Foundation. I started as a local partner in Uganda, and I was lucky enough to join Grameen Foundation as our executive vice president in 2015. And recently, I've been able to rejoin the organization as a member of the board. I'm so lucky to be part of an organization that I believe in so much. And one of the reasons I believe in Grameen is that we have always centered women as agents of change, both for themselves and for their communities. This started in our foundational role in the microfinance movement, a movement that was born of the belief that when women have access to resources, they invest them in themselves, in their businesses, in their families, and in their communities. We all have women who have been agents of change in our lives. For me, it's my mother. There's no heartache I have that she can't soothe. There's no ambition I have that she doesn't believe I can achieve. For some of you, maybe it's an auntie, one who showed you how to step out of societal expectations and follow your passions. For some of you, maybe it's a teacher who believed that you can succeed even when you didn't. For Grameen, women have always been our agents of change. Whether it's in Ghana, where women are teaching farmers in their communities how to increase their harvests and grow their incomes. In Burkina Faso, when women are teaching their community members how to save, but also how to access better health care. In places like India and the Philippines, where women are becoming digital financial touch points in their communities, not just to help other women do transactions, but to patiently help their neighbors learn how to use and access exciting new digital financial services. These women, and more like them, they are Grameen's legacy. And I invite you to join me in looking back through the years at Grameen Foundation at the women that we've supported to change not only their world, but ours. Thank you.
It all begins with her, Sophia Belgam, a 21-year-old basket weaver in Bangladesh. One day in 1974, as she weaves bamboo stools, Sophia shares the dismal economics of her craft with Mohammed Yunus, a young teacher at the nearby university. After paying a middleman for the bamboo in each stool, Sophia had only 2 cents left to show for her labor. Her story so appalls Professor Yunus that he sends his economics students out to survey other destitute female weavers. They identify 42, who collectively owe $27. Digging into his own pocket, Professor Yunus pays off all the women's loans, telling each to repay him when she could. They do, every one. And with that, Grameen Bank is born, based on a model of providing the uncollateralized poor with credit, based solely on her integrity, her potential, her perseverance. Fast forward to 1997. After traveling to Bangladesh as a Fulbright scholar to work with Professor Yunus, Counts returns to the U.S. determined to spread the Grameen model across the globe. Working from his dining room table with $6,000 in seed money from Professor Yunus, Alex Counts founds the Grameen Foundation.
Our first priority, of course, was to help grow the global microfinance movement. And we selected several dozen organizations that were reaching 900,000 poor women. And we said, let's help them grow and add 5 million clients. And it was hugely ambitious, but we exceeded our goal by 2 million borrowers in over 5 years. And that was thrilling, but it turned out, like Professor Yunus, we were just getting started. We came up with other ideas to extend his model. We came up with TerraWorks, came up with Grameen Capital India, the Community Knowledge Worker Program, mobile technology for global health. And these initiatives continue to this day to have a massive impact. And what binds all of these things together, and now Grameen Foundation's Community Agent Network, which is the latest expression of this, is it's grounded in the potential, often overlooked, of the world's poor women, especially when organizations like ours can work with them, not for them.
Through these efforts, and with help from generous donors and committed partners, we empower her, and millions more hers around the world, with resources to leverage her abilities, increase income, health, and resilience, and create a different future for herself and her family.
Yes, very powerful woman, yeah.
By 2015, Grameen programs are directly impacting more than 3 million people each year, most living on less than $2.50 a day. Then comes the spark that launches Grameen to new heights. In 2016, Grameen Foundation merges with Freedom from Hunger, the poverty-fighting organization with a venerable 75-year history of its own. From its start as Meals for Millions in 1946, Freedom from Hunger has evolved to be a pioneer in finding permanent solutions to poverty by integrating microfinance with nutrition, health, agriculture, and gender equality, using self-help groups as a platform to deliver education and resources to very poor women and youth, and deploying landmark programs across the globe. Freedom from Hunger had, by 2015, empowered more than 5 million women and youth clients in 23 countries with tools to improve their lives and set themselves and their families on a path to freedom from hunger. Now, fueled by the energy of collaboration with former Freedom from Hunger colleagues, Grameen Foundation sets an audacious goal: to reach 25 million people by 2025 with the tools and training they need to break free from poverty permanently. Because the need has never been greater. COVID-19, political conflict, and worsening inequality are projected to add 198 million extreme poor in 2022. Natural disasters and water and food shortages are forecasted to displace 1.2 billion people by 2050. How then are we progressing toward our goal? We start by listening to women and families tell us exactly what they need. Then we work with them to create real-world tools and services unique to their needs. Whether that's digital solutions that teach sustainable farming practices, access to loans, savings, trade markets, and drought-resistant seeds, or training about business, gender equality, and COVID-19 prevention. We provide the resources. They do the rest. With the help of our powerful community agent network, we scale our success and increase momentum. The agents, mostly women who we train and equip, provide tools and services we develop to their neighbors in even last-mile rural communities. Each community agent can annually serve an average of 150 clients, each living in households averaging 5 people. The agent earns as a micro-entrepreneur, but her agent status is more than a source of income. It is a source of pride and community respect. The Community Agent Network does more than scale our work. It scales the impact of our donors' gifts. So far, we've reached over 16 million people. We have 3 years to reach 9 million more to meet our goal, 25 million people by 2025. And when we are done, we'll do it again. Because together, we can help these courageous women create a world without poverty and hunger, where children can go to bed well-nourished, where parents can pay to send their children to school and buy medicine, where families are equipped to prepare for and survive whatever comes next. Together, we can create a brighter future for her, and her. Grameen Foundation, 25 years of EmpowHERment.
What a wonderful overview of the great history of Freedom from Hunger and Grameen Foundation. Next up, we have a fireside chat that's going to be talking about the landscape of international development. And for this chat, on our left, we have Peter Cowie, who is the board chair of Grameen Foundation, and Don Gips, who is the CEO of Skoll Foundation. Skoll Foundation catalyzes transformational social change by investing in, connecting, and championing social entrepreneurs and other social innovators working on the world's most problems. Don and Peter, take it away.
Thanks so much, Brent, and thanks to all of you joining us from around the world and for taking time to learn more about the mission and passion for change of this great organization, the Grameen Foundation. I'm really delighted that Don Gibbs can be with us today. I should properly call him Ambassador Gibbs, but we've been friends for too many years for me to gild the lily. Don has shared a journey with me in part because we began together in the Clinton administration proclaiming the benefits that digital technology could bring to the world, including to the poorest countries in the world. And we both ended up migrating to a larger mission of dealing with the questions of poverty. It's a broad social and economic phenomenon around the world. Don, we've seen in those years since the 1990s a lot of progress and some setbacks in addressing the amelioration of poverty in the world. I wonder if you have any thoughts from your vantage point at the Skull Foundation, where you've tried so many experiments and helped so many innovators.
Yeah, Peter, and first of all, it's wonderful to be here with the Grameen Foundation, celebrating 25 years of amazing work in the world, and just so great to be back with my old friend Peter, who anytime he asks me to do anything, I do it. Usually it meant dragging me off to some place in the world where I didn't expect to be, but it always paid off. So really glad to be here celebrating all of this. You know, as we think about the mission of alleviating poverty in the world, you know, I'm always reminded of Martin Luther King's advice to all of us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We are on that path. You know, since you and I were working together, 1.2 billion people have moved out of poverty around the world. Now, that statistic goes up to 2018. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, with rising climate disasters, as we think about and send condolences to the people in Nigeria and Pakistan who are suffering from flooding as we speak, to the conflicts around the world, which are driving up prices, making famine a possibility again in large parts of the world, we realize this is not an easy fight, and we are going backwards at the moment and need to re-energize in our efforts to address this. You know, in 2013, Skoll, we have a big annual forum, and we give away something called the Global Treasure Prize. And in 2013, that was given to Muhammad Yunus. And when he spoke at that event, he talked about the fact that it used to be science fiction that people could go to the moon. And then we set our mind to fixing that. He said, alleviating poverty, we need to think of it as a social fiction that we can alleviate if we set our minds to it. That work inspires us at Skoll, where we bet on great people doing great things in the world. That was Jeff's original vision, and that's what you all are doing at Grameen. So I believe we can keep addressing that and make poverty no longer, it will be a social fiction, and as Muhammad also said in that speech, it would be wonderful someday to go to a museum to look at what poverty used to be, because we've eradicated it.
Well, that's a terrific statement of a vision for what we hope to achieve. I think that an experience that runs across our two organizations is that there are no single magic bullets to achieving that goal. And in fact, both the changes and challenges influence our path, the pandemic, for example. But it's also true that we try different solutions, and many of them move us forward, but then we start to run into, it can only take us so far. At Grameen, for example, we were originally helping to scale the microfinance revolution in the world, and we did great work in that. But once it became commercial, then we had to move on to the next frontier in order to deal with that. You've been looking for the entrepreneurs and the innovators around the world. Tell me about a couple of the ideas that you found compelling, or the people.
Oh, there's so many. I could go on and use up all of our time. But let me talk first about some of the trends we're seeing and what's having an impact in the world. And first, you've talked about one of them, which is technology. It's both a challenge in many settings. You know, if we look at what's happening to our information ecosystem here in the United States or in other parts of the world, it's a challenge, but it's also a huge enabler and enables all sorts of innovation that allows the most marginalized, if we can reach them, to access markets, to access medical care, and I'll come back and talk about an example along that line. Second, you know, when we started out, the Skoll and Grameen Foundation sort of started around the same period. There wasn't a field of social entrepreneurship or social innovation. As a matter of fact, Skoll started the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship at Oxford, and I was just talking with somebody from Oxford the other day, and I was saying, like, how many other centers are there? She said, we think almost every business school now has a center of social innovation or social entrepreneurship. So we've now built this broad community, has built a field of practice. And I think that's critical because none of these solutions, as you said, are the silver bullet. We need to combine them all. And that's something we're starting to see more and more of in our work, which are what we call a systems orchestrator. People who are working across public, private, and nonprofit sectors in integrating that work. And when I read about what Grameen's been doing and see what you're doing, that's exactly the type of work you're doing. You're looking at how do you bring together government. And the last trend we're seeing is a recognition of the power of the most proximate people to these problems to have the answers. So digging down, figuring out how you connect the most proximate with the centers of power and get the best practice so that they can enable that. There's an alchemy in there that can drive real social change. And we're starting to see that across all of the work that we do. So some of the examples, well, I'll give you one which should be close to Grameen's heart. During COVID, you know, most people ran away from the fire. Social innovators ran into the fire. They wanted to deliver for their communities. We funded a group called COVID Action Collaborative in India that Grameen was a part of that reached into the most remote areas and helped drive change in a way that just gives you hope for what's possible. Another example that we're really excited about now is something called the Africa Frontline Fund. So a couple statistics. Community health workers in Africa are the front line of vaccines, delivering health care, and during COVID, we're the only people providing medical care. 85% of them are unpaid, 75% are women. People saw what they were doing during COVID. And Peter Sands, who runs the Global Fund, worked with a woman named Angela Jakaga in Kenya and created something called the Africa Frontline First Fund, which will now be a very large fund in the hundreds of millions to support countries who will take these community healthcare workers, pay them, integrate them into the community healthcare system, provide them the digital tools and training to do their job, and to be the front line to measure when are we entering into the next pandemic, because we all know that this won't be the last one. So exciting stories like that give me hope.
Right. So one of the things that we've discovered is that the combination of technology and people, as you say, really driving down to the local, to the grassroots, and particularly at Grameen, where we have a goal that at least 70% of the people that we reach and enable through our programs are women, and at least 30% are at the bottom of the poverty pyramid, can be empowered by digital technology, by combining the digital technology and these networks of women's agents to create more scalable enterprises. And they have the effect of both immediately lifting the families of the women out of poverty, but also creating an infrastructure for progress of their villages. But there's a lot that we still don't know about how to make those work at even larger scales, because as you said, the numbers are still overwhelming for all the progress that we've made. So have you thought at all about the issue of further scaling the solutions that we're all experimenting with?
Think about it every day. It's core to the challenge of what we face. But I want to come back and give a statistic because I just read it this morning. If you were to remove the barriers that women face in smallholder farming around the world, this is a recent study, you could increase their productivity by 2.5 to 4% across the agricultural economy. You know, that doesn't sound like that much. That translates into being able to feed an additional 150 million people annually. It's the power of what you're doing and what a number of the organizations we're working with are doing to really bring those tools and then integrate them into the value chain. So I actually had breakfast this morning with one of our grantees, Root Capital, who's figuring out how do you build this whole value chain all the way up from the smallholder farmer to the mid-sized agricultural entrepreneur. In this case, they were working on coffee to Starbucks buying from their value chain. It is possible, and we need to figure out how to scale it and move it more quickly. And I do believe that the answers are out there, and we're seeing models of this. And I also believe that companies, because consumers are demanding it and their employees are demanding it, are going to start looking for more solutions, and their investors are going to start looking for more solutions along these lines.
Well, I think this issue of scaling also shows the power of networks in multiplying their effects over time. Grameen has about 15,000 community agents deployed right now, but our estimate is that they are actually affecting several million households. And that's possible because both the network has effects on their neighbors, but also the knowledge that's spread off of that changes the community as a whole. And so there's great promise here, but I think also that we have to be humble that there's a lot more learning that's going to be going on. One other comment, and I'd like your reaction to it in our closing minutes, is in the United States, we sometimes have a tendency to think that agents of change are heroic. They're extraordinary people. And there's heroism in everyday life. But what's really extraordinary about the women that we work with around the world is that they are us. They are people in every household, of every background, and they find the way to be heroic. It doesn't take a movie star to have an entrepreneur leading to change.
You know, we helped fund a film that is about Jeffrey Canada called Waiting for Superman, about education, Waiting for Superman. And his point is we can't wait for Superman. Supermen are all over the place. And we need to figure out how do we give people the tools and the access to realize their full potential. That's why I'm so happy to come here and talk about the work of Grameen Foundation, because at Skoll, this is what we're all about, trying to figure out how do you empower those great social innovators who are, you know, hopefully quite proximate to the problems they're working on, can see the answers and work with the communities that they know best to give them the tools, power, and access to achieve their vision.
I think that that is, in fact, the common DNA that we share as organizations. I think the last point that I'd like to make is one that goes to your opening point about climate change. There are a lot of the challenges that are going to face the poor that our organizations are addressing where we actually don't know the answers. To know how to adapt crops to climate change in the poorest areas with not that much money for fertilizer and special inputs is a special challenge, and we're going to have to learn literally what the solution is. There's not something to hand off, and the odds are that they're going to invent many of the solutions in doing it on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, we believe, you know, we've seen this in other sectors where people come together. Right now, the best practices are diffuse. They're in a number of pockets, another number of organizations. You know, in the Skoll portfolio alone, we have One Acre Fund, MyAgro, Landesa, Root Capital, Bob and Goa, all amazing organizations. And they were all just got together and said, we're not sharing our knowledge. We're not working together to take the best practices that each of us have. So we actually have a meeting on Monday with all of them to sort of say, how do we scale this? How do we create that community of knowledge that will help us figure out where are all the best things happening? And then also advocate for the changes in the rules and the systems that enable those smallholder farmers to get to market, to get the subsidies that are sometimes quite inefficient. So we're very excited about the potential there.
So that raises the ultimate question of the changing attitude and strategies of governments, which have vast resources and do control the rules of the game on the ground. Governments themselves are going through the shock of what's the future of the multilateral system, the future of globalization. You've worked at the highest reaches of government. Do the things that you're seeing at play out there in the world make you feel that a partnership with government is going to be productive, or do we have new challenges that are going to make our tasks even more challenging in some ways?
I mean, sort of two responses to that. One is the external environment we're going to operate in over the next 5 years is going to be very challenging. Mm-hmm. Aid budgets are down because of so much money going rightfully into Ukraine. The level of, you know, we're moving from a monopolar world to a bipolar world, and that's creating tensions and putting real pressure on the multilateral system. The flip side, though, is we're seeing and we're realizing that social innovators have to work harder at this, but where social innovators bring government in at the beginning and work not just at the national level, but work at the regional level and the local level. Government officials around the world, just like you said, they're people too. They want to see their communities improved. You have to engage them in the conversation early enough that they don't see it as a threat or a way to change. And this is a big part of what we're working with our portfolio on how do you engage government in the right way to bring these solutions to scale. And we're starting to see it in healthcare, we're starting to see it in ag, and in livelihoods more broadly. And I think if we can do that, we can scale these solutions and maybe create that museum for poverty someday that Muhammad Yunus talked about in 2013.
Well, Don, I hope that, as they said in Casablanca, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship between the Skoll Foundation and the Grameen Foundation. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
All right. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Peter. So next up, we're going to have a panel of current Graminis talking about some of the work that we're doing today. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody that we have a match today, and we would love to take advantage of all the match. Any funds that you donate today will be matched by our generous donors. So you can donate either by clicking the button on the bottom right of the screen, or following the text to give instructions on the screen as well. So next up, we're going to have a panel of 4 people. The first person is the Director of Bankers Without Borders, Sabrina Qureshi. We have the Regional Director of Africa, Alfred Yaboa, Grameen Foundation's India CEO, Prabhat Lab, and our Senior Director of Program Strategy and Learning, Gigi Gatti. Hi, everybody, and several of you have made quite long trips to get here today, so thank you for coming. So I wanted to start just with a little bit about yourselves. If you could please tell us about yourself and what you do at Grameen and why you're passionate about the work. Maybe what we'll do is we'll start with you, Alfred, and we'll come this direction. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. My name is Alfred Yebo. I'm the Regional Director for Africa and also the Interim Director for Program Delivery. So the question is, what excites me about what Grameen Foundation does? For me, I think what is unique about Grameen, and which excites me so much, is the fact that we don't only look at scaling up our innovations to get more people, more rural poor people to benefit from our solutions, but we also scale deep by working at the deeper levels, of systems and norms change. And we carefully balance our social and technological innovation with quality implementation and learning. The type of learning that translates into ideas that we use in co-creating solutions with our beneficiaries. And I also think that we are able to bring the right partners to the table and to drive, impact through collaboration. We also prioritize trusts over output to get a, buy-in and sustainability of our projects. And lastly, our approach is very gender intentional. We believe that once we are addressing harmful gender norms, then the outcomes for our program beneficiaries are made better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alfred. My name is Gigi Gatti. I'm the Senior Director for Global Program Strategy and Learning. And I've been with Grameen for quite some time now, seeing the organization evolve. And as we were sharing a while ago, our roots are we are rooted from the work of Professor Yunus of microfinance movement. What really excites me is that our work with women is very focused. And I believe that women empowerment is one of the biggest challenges, as well, but also holds the key and the opportunity for not only poverty alleviation, but also economic empowerment in general. And to me, that's very exciting because so many women around the world are still marginalized. There is still a lot of digital divide. There's still a lot of gender divide. And closing this gap and continuing our work in Grameen with women is something to look forward to. Yeah.
Thank you, Gigi. I'm Prabhat Lab, and I manage Grameen Foundation's work in India. Been there for slightly over 5 years now. What really excites me about Grameen is that if you look at the trajectory of last 25 years of Grameen, it has evolved. It has constantly been evolving. And that's a fantastic sign for any organization, given the times that we live in. The times are changing fast, the context is changing fast, the opportunities are coming, and some things also become irrelevant. So over the course of time, like yesterday evening over dinner, we were talking about some people still perceive that, okay, Grameen Foundation does micro-lending. I had to clarify, no, we don't. We have moved on from there. So it's a variety of things that we are doing today, which entails working with women entrepreneurs, entails working with digital technology, looking at data and measurement, all of things. So in that sense, it's really very fulfilling to be part of an organization which is not scared of trying out new things, succeeding in some of them and failing in many of them, but nevertheless learning with everything that we do. That's as a human being, that's a sign of progress, that when we are willing to experiment, fail, learn, and move ahead. Very, very exciting about that part of Grameen. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Sabrina Qureshi, and I'm the director of Bankers Without Borders, Grameen Foundation's volunteer initiative. Originally from Bangladesh, so Grameen and the microfinance movement has resonated with me a long time ago. And I'm proud to have celebrated my 15th year with Grameen Foundation just last month. What excites me, in true Grameen's innovative spirit, soon after the Nobel Peace Prize, Grameen saw this opportunity to establish one of the biggest global reserve corps of poverty fighters around the world, what makes Bankers Without Borders today. Fast forward 14 years, we boast about over 25,000 BWB volunteers from 170 countries, serving over 300 social enterprises in 50 countries. So if that's not exciting enough, I don't know what is, because we are bringing together such a strong core of volunteers and supporters outside of just the few hundred employees of Grameen Foundation, but really we have a big mission to solve, and we can't do it alone. So as much support we can get, we welcome it. Thank you.
So Prabhat, if we could pass the Prabhat. So Prabhat, on that theme of change that you mentioned, when Grameen started, we mostly were working with microfinance institutions, but today the range of actors is much different. And in India, you're working with a very wide range of actors. Can you talk about the types of partners we have now, particularly in India, and the changes that we've seen in the types of actors doing this work?
Sure, Brent. Originally, of course, we were working with a lot of microfinance institutions as our partners, and they had one product in their toolkit, which was microfinance. But looking at the fairly complex nature of the lives of low-income people, we saw the need to intervene at various levels. Like more than half the people in India depend on agriculture as a source of livelihoods. So we had to get into that whole domain of agriculture. And how do you intervene in that? So you look at, okay, how and where farmers get their inputs from, which is quality, which is timely, and at a right price. So we kind of intervene in that space. And the biggest challenge the farmers face is how do you get your produce to the market so that you get the right price for your produce? So we are making those connections. How do you access information about various crops, good agricultural practices? So we're getting that information in the hands of farmers by leveraging these digital tools. And I'm really proud of the fact that Grameen has been one organization which is really excelled in that in terms of leveraging digital tools for doing various things in the space of agriculture or in the space of health or digital finance. So that's a big part of our work. But it's not just these kind of interventions about, which is say economic in nature, but also going a little deeper as to who are the people who really play a role in the agriculture value chains. And when it comes to the work on the farms, we know that it's the women who do most of the work on the farm, but when it comes to the economic part of agricultural transactions, it's the men who control that. And we are trying to change that so that women actually play a more important role in that whole value chain. So we work with these farmer cooperatives, farmer produce organizations in India. When we started working with them, they had on an average 8% women members, the rest 92% was men. After working with them for 2 years, today we have been able to drive that number from 8% to 35%. So that women actually are benefiting from agriculture, not just working in agriculture. That's one example. We're also working a lot in women's economic empowerment and women-owned businesses, that whole space. We know that micro and small enterprises kind of generate almost 90% of the jobs in the informal sector. And we are trying to see how these micro and small businesses can be put on the growth path through access to capital, through access to digital technology. So we are working in that space. We're also looking at the products and services that the low-income people need in the rural areas and in the remote areas, and creating mechanisms to do that by creating a network of last-mile agents or women entrepreneurs that we call Grameen Mitras, who are again digitally enabled and who bring a host of products and services to these local communities. Yeah, so there are a number of things happening in India, exciting. And it's amazing, what is possible when you put the power of network and, connected by digital technology together and the passion of people. So,
of course. Alfred, so today in Africa, your team is working with women in some very difficult places, difficult to reach places. refugee settlements in northern Uganda and some very remote communities in Ghana. Can you talk about some of the keys to success in working in these communities and working in areas that are often cut off from many of the other systems you find elsewhere in the countries where they are?
Yeah, thank you. So access to finance is a big issue, a big challenge, especially for the rural poor woman. And access to service points has always remained a challenge. And the financial institutions, private sector players find it hard. They don't see the business model in serving these rural poor communities. What Grameen has done is to work with these private sector players, microfinance institutions, savings groups, and even local civil society organizations to explore how we are able to set up a female agent network in each of these rural communities, empower them and build their capacities to use digital innovations, and also leverage the mobile money platforms of our private sector mobile network operator. Use that, set them up to operate successful micro businesses as mobile money vendors, providing a menu of digital financial services in their communities. It doesn't end there. We go beyond to also build a capacity of the same female agents to also provide non-financial services to their communities. So it's kind of killing, two birds with one stone. So these agents are also providing very critical and timely, digital financial literacy training, business skills training to their communities, and importantly, are also serving as gender-based violence referral support points in their community. So for survivors of gender-based violence, which is quite an issue when it comes to harmful gender norms in our communities, we have these agents who are empowered with the tools and have been provided the soft skills to be able to provide referral support services to the survivors of gender-based violence. So for us, it is a holistic approach, one that centers on the woman, but bring on board men as allies to achieve this seamless suite of service. Thank you.
All right, Sabrina. Earlier I mentioned the proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And on Grameen's journey, we've been joined by thousands of Bankers Without Borders volunteers. Can you sort of give the summary of how Bankers Without Borders started and where you see it going in the next 25 years of service?
Absolutely. So we started about 14 years ago with a generous support from JP Morgan, at the time really engaging their investment bankers and servicing the microfinance sector. The reason being, the Nobel Peace Prize happened, the financial institutions came to us saying, how can we get engaged in this sector? So this was really the premise of Bankers Without Borders. Very quickly we saw, well, our mission is to eradicate world poverty and hunger. Why stop with just the microfinance sector? So I've become industry agnostic. I mean, as long as we are servicing organizations with a market-based approach, solving some poverty issue, we are able to serve them. So then we became, we started serving more and more organizations around the world, and then we have over 300 in 50 countries that we're serving. The kind of support that we're providing is either virtual, on the ground, a mix, and it's really around needs, various needs that these organizations are facing, whether it's around financial services, whether it's around HR, marketing, strategy. And recently, the pandemic happened. So we had lofty plans of serving organizations in a series of projects, and then quickly it's become a virtual model. Volunteers are no longer able to travel. Client organizations who traditionally want people on the ground right there, we couldn't do that. So in our true innovative spirit, here's what we've done. U.S. volunteers are still able to volunteer virtually, and we're coupling them with local resources, local volunteers who are there to provide on-ground support. And then what's happening, they're bringing the local expertise, they're bringing in the language fluency, which actually is lending to better support and long-lasting impact. The kind of support we're providing now we're seeing a trend, it's around digitizing business operations. Suddenly it's proliferation of e-commerce platforms. It's looking at business and strategy, refresh for these organizations, and a proliferation of development of financial products and services spearheaded by the pandemic. We've also partnered with USAID, working with farmers in certain countries, providing access to finance, and with that bringing in these volunteers. I mean, mind you, we're doing this all on pro bono service. So we're seeing a big shift in how we're doing how we're providing the service and in kinds of technical assistance that we're providing.
Great. Gigi, next question for you. What do you foresee as being the most pressing challenges for Grameen over the next 5 to 10 years from your perspective of seeing our global programs?
So a couple of things, Brent, and thank you for that question. So I think the biggest challenge is time. Time is going so fast, and just in the recent years, so many things have happened that caught humanity basically, unaware that it's going to happen, like this pandemic and how fast climate change is actually affecting everyone. So to me, that the biggest challenge really is how to maintain that agility in order for us to be able to respond to these challenges on a very timely basis. If we really look at how Grameen's work has evolved throughout the years, yes, we are using technology, yes, we are innovating, but the poverty alleviation roadmap, that we've been through took years, and we have to admit that it took time, But in the next years, we don't have that luxury of time anymore. So how do we leverage on what we have already learned? What assets are out there? Who are our catalytic partners in order to speed up the work and the scale? Because what I think will happen is that because of climate change, there will be a lot of people who will be displaced. And this will set us back again, as we heard, earlier during the Fireside chat. Yeah.
All right, it's kind of time to come to a close here. So I want to end with asking each of you to share a story, and we'll start with Sabrina here, and we'll go right to left. But please share a story from your time at Grameen that stuck with you and maybe keeps you going when times are tough, but something that inspires you to keep doing the work even when it may be difficult.
I often joke saying what I do with Bankers Without Borders is not just playing Match.com, but we're also the wedding planners and the therapists post-wedding. And the therapy continues. Now with the pandemic, we have so many volunteers coming to us saying, I'm going crazy, I've been working from home, I have all this time, what can I do? And providing them some opportunities, or finding purpose is a big one. So we, oftentimes for me, that makes a difference. We're meeting countless of volunteers, trying to find them, suddenly finding purpose through these volunteering opportunities. A story comes to mind. Recently, I was in the Philippines just this summer, and in the rural areas, visiting a cooperative that works with cacao farmers. And a volunteer was visiting just 2 weeks before. Wells Fargo volunteer with marketing background, providing some marketing support to this cooperative. The volunteer went beyond and said, hey, you're producing this chocolate. Why just stop with milk chocolate? Why not diversify the product and do caramel chocolate, espresso, chili? And that was quite spicy, actually. and then designed the wrappers for these chocolates and said, let's use stories of the farmers, of the women who are producing these chocolate, the farmers. So suddenly there are pictures and stories, I mean, going way and beyond what the project was asking for. So I'm visiting, and then I see this chocolate, you know, at the stores, you know, and I knew, oh my God, this volunteer was just here, you know, advising on the chocolate, and they're actually being sold right there. And that was an extremely heartwarming story for me. And there are countless many, as we do 500 deployments a year, and there's equally heartwarming stories every year from the BWV side.
Thank you. Such an inspiring story there. I mean, there's so many, you know, stories. One is that we work with these Grameen Mitras, like women entrepreneurs. We have around 2,200 of them in different parts of India, connected to a digital platform, who serve their local community. And so one of them is like Priya Chamat. She's about 28 years old. She's married. She has got 2 children. She kind of provides digital banking services in her village. She also provides agriculture inputs to the farmers. When girls and women need to buy sanitary napkin, they can buy it from Priya, which is a huge advantage for them because they don't have to go to a, you know, male shopkeeper and, you know, be embarrassed, you know, as part of that transaction. People can also buy, you know, things like solar, you know, lanterns from Priya because the electricity is not reliable, and that helps children to continue their studies using the solar lanterns. But the most remarkable part of this whole story was that we had invited Priya to come to Delhi to talk to a group of students who had come to India from Wharton Business School. So Priya had come, and because she had an infant child with her, she brought the child. And she was on the panel like this. And her child was kind of, you know, of course, was 8 months old. After a few minutes was impatient and wanted her attention. And she, of course, had brought her husband as the caregiver for the child. And husband kind of, you know, was taking care of the child, was Priya was on the dais. For me, that's like the most remarkable thing I have ever seen, that kind of role reversal, because we automatically gravitate to women becoming the caregiver and hence getting left behind in their opportunities and what they can do. And so this kind of, you know, very fundamental shift that is happening at the household level, that for me was profound. Of course, you know, at the macro level, we can talk about, you know, $26 million worth of transactions that these Grameen Mitras have processed, or so many income, employment opportunities that have been created. But yeah, I mean, these are, behind each of those numbers is like an individual story of change that we see at the household level, which is remarkable. Thank you.
Gigi.
So maybe I will be a bit greedy and share 2 stories. One, my colleagues have heard over and over again, and this is a story of me trailing the loan officers in India in one of the harshest winters, attending a women's group meeting so they can repay their loans. And it was so cold, and in that home where we all met, there was no roof. And so I asked the women, you know, why isn't there any roof in this home? And the answer was, because when money is scarce and there's no food in the table, the roof has to be sold. Because it was the only thing that had value in their home. And that struck me. It has always been my favorite story in the sense that it really shows you that human aspect of why we really need to solve this problem of economic empowerment. And we're not just talking about, you know, solving the roofing problem, but economic empowerment as a whole. You know, as the mission for everyone. And nobody should be able to suffer that way. Well, to cut the story short, the success part of that story is that we came up with a housing loan, okay, that was not the same as the entrepreneurship loan, so they were able to have now access to 2 products, basically. But that is not the end goal of the story. I think the story is that when humans are suffering, right, we need to understand the root cause of that suffering. And, this is something that, to me, we've been very good at in Grameen Foundation. Really understanding the root cause, of what we need to solve and what it takes for us to solve that problem. And we don't always have all the assets to solve that problem, but being able to orchestrate, partnerships that will help us solve those problems is very important in our work. And my second quick story, and I'm sorry, Brent, I'm going to ignore your ask for one story, is that while my colleagues were busy doing a focus group discussion, I took one of the children of the women in the focus group discussion aside and just took him in my lap, and I played my Android phone with him. And in 10 minutes, that little boy was able to navigate the Android phone, something that we have been trying to train the women for, for the last 2 months or so. So to me, that story is also very important because that gives me hope, okay? Hope for the younger generation. And this I see as a trend, that so many young people now are very socially aware. They're no longer, the consumer society, that we have seen. And I would like to peg my hope with this new generation of young people who are now being social entrepreneurs, who are putting in, a lot of their lives and their own interests to be part of the development that we have to, face. Yeah.
Alfred, close
Yeah,
it out.
thank you. So for me, a story that has stuck with me and actually keeps me going is that of a small-scale farmer called Amina. It's a maize farmer in rural Ghana who is now breaking the cycle of poverty in her community. That kind of poverty that is induced by the triple global crisis of climate change, COVID-19 and other health-related issues, and also the disruptions in supply chain of farm inputs, inorganic fertilizer, occasioned by the situation in Ukraine. So pictured here is Amina and her family, Alassane, the husband, and then 4 lovely children. Her situation then was how to deal with unpredictable rainfall patterns and warmer temperatures. So the rains do not come when Amina expects. And then when the rain finally comes, it could rain up to about 2 weeks and it causes flooding on a farm. And then the warmer temperatures, especially when she plants, the sun also comes in so strongly that the crops are affected. And the warmer temperatures sometimes triggers pest infestation, and she loses so much. At one point, she lost about 15 to 17 bags of maize because of pest infestation on the farm. And another challenge for Amina is that the only river in her community is also drying up because of warmer temperatures. And now she needs to walk up to about a mile to collect water and firewood just to prepare the household meal. What this means is that she has lesser time for her farm activities. And then she also has to take some part of her small income she gets from the farm to take care of her husband, who was down with COVID for several months, and 2 of her children who also had malaria. For me, the story of Amina stands out because she's charting her own pathway to resilience by using very simple technology to adapt to a changing climate, and also to adapt to health shocks to her livelihoods. And I think Grameen Foundation has been part of this success story by working with local partners to foster collaboration, co-invention, and more importantly, collective responsibility. The way we approach our work is one, to understand what the priorities of Amina and similar farmers are in their communities, and also understand what kind of changes they want to see when it comes to adapting to a changing climate. And importantly, co-design, how that change can happen. And I'm happy to say that we're able to work with local partners to come up with simple farmer radio programming on climate information services that Amina receives on a simple feature phone. And also she's able to tune in every Wednesday to listen to farmer radio programs on how other women are adapting to climate change. And the good thing is that all of this information that Amina gets is helping her to identify and to also, look for better livelihood options that are suitable to her circumstance and climatic condition. And now she's adopting what we call a cropping calendar that has planting date and sowing times that are very specific to a situation. She's also now using improved maize seed variety that is drought resistant and has low water requirements, and improved seeds that are also resistant to pest infestation. And the seeds also now have shorter maturity cycles. So now it doesn't take longer time for her to harvest and get the proceeds that she needs from her farm. And the good thing is that the husband is now also planting trees on the maize farm to provide some kind of shade to the crop, especially during prolonged dry seasons. And something that Grameen did that I'm so proud of and I associate with is going a step further to also provide them education in how they can diversify their livelihoods so they don't put all their eggs in one basket. And now that family is also raising small ruminants and poultry, and they use the droppings of this poultry to serve as manure, organic fertilizer for the farm. And for me, this is a true story which represents the definition of what resilience and local development efforts looks like. So that is why the story of Amina, for me, works for me. It stands out for me. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks all of you for these great stories. Thank you for the passion and commitment you guys bring to the work, and thank you for your dedication to Grameen's mission. You're great representatives of the impact that we're having across the world in so many different sectors. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of our program. I want to thank again our panelists and Don Gibbs and Peter Cowie on our Fireside chat. Want to thank everybody who's made a donation. As a reminder, the matching gift will run through the rest of this week. So if you haven't donated yet, it's not too late. Please consider giving. We also would like to thank Alex Counts, who founded Grameen 25 years ago today. Really a continuing inspiration to the work that we're doing. Thank you to the Grameen Foundation board members, many of whom are here today and have given very generously of their time and resources to the organization over the years. Want to thank the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center for hosting the event today. Capital Group, a longtime, very generous supporter of Grameen, whose support has been super helpful. I want to thank Grameen's current staff and also former staff, former Grameenies who are still in connection with the organization. There's so many times that I'm at other organizations, I run into former Grameenies who have still connections with it. It's a very wide family of people in the world. Thank you to our donors and to all of you for tuning in to the event. We are excited for the next 25 years. We have a great 25 years that looking back on, and the next 25 years should be even more exciting. New challenges, but I think we will be able to continue the progress. So hope you'll continue supporting us and continue supporting our work. And thank you all again for your time today.